So, everyone, I welcome you all. This is our second session on the ethics of Aristotle, Nicomachean Ethics. And here with us, we have Professor Daniel Del Monte, who is a PhD scholar, philosopher, professor. He's a distinguished philosopher and he's based in the greater Philadelphia area. And Dr. Daniel completed his doctorate in philosophy at Temple University in 2021. And he frequently publishes on topic which is related to Aristotelian ethics, spirituality, contemplative life, also classical philosophical traditions also, as well as now he started covering about the Indian philosophy also. So it is very good to have Professor Daniel here. Now we
Thank
have
you,
with
Professor
us,
Bobby.
thank you for joining. And we are also very much privileged to have with us a very good educator and the founder of the Universal Philosophical Community is none other than Dimitrios Christ. Now what uh, is about his community, he can better tell us. So let me just give a brief introduction. He is dedicated about philosophical dialogue because I'm very impressed, highly impressed by how he initiates dialogues and how he engages us in deep philosophical questions. That is what I literally like about the ideas that he shares. And he has been very instrumental in creating spaces where we have to work with philosophical theories. Because I remember he has read my, complete chapter of the thesis, and I was very much felt like that he literally take all these things very seriously. And he has been very instrumental in all these things, including emerging theories like he was also discussing about God, theorism, and all these things with the diverse communities. And he has got his YouTube channel where he usually talks about such kind of theories, which is very complex to understand, but they discuss it in a very simple way, easy way, so that it could be understood by whole community in a large. And we have with us uh, very good scholars, participants. We have Aisha, who is a PhD research scholar from University of Delhi, and she is a very dedicated doctoral researcher from University of Delhi. She always bring her academic insight into this discussion, and she always inquire with great philosophical insight and philosophical inquiry. So I welcome you, Aisha. And we have Bhavna, who is also a philosophical researcher. Now she is currently doing her PhD. So Bhavna, you can tell us about your PhD also. And she's also specialized in doing the research, about theories which relate to the culture and society. So you can tell us more. And we have Saima also, who is also a philosophy scholar. And she is also a passionate student and thinker in the field of philosophy. She has a fresh perspective about the world, and she always takes greater interest in, collaborative work, and she has a good research skill. So everyone can talk about themselves a brief, what is their work is all about, so that we can develop a better engagement. And then later on, we will start with our discussion on the specified topic. So a brief, Dimitris Renis, would you like to please start?
Yeah, thank you for your kind words, first of all. It's also a pleasure to be a guest in your show. So yeah, I have a little presentation regarding Nicomachean Ethics, and I basically focus on the virtues, which in turn lead to the definition of eudaimonia. Can you listen to me clearly?
Yes.
Yes, you are very much audible. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So the information I'm going to use are taken from the site of our mentor, the mentor of our philosophical community, the Greek mentor, philosophy professor Dimitris Georgopoulos, who owns the site Hegel Platon, Once you visit it, you're going to find dozens of articles and books which are very interesting, and philosophy books, Greek as well as ancient Greek books. Let me start by clarifying the two categories of virtues Aristotle talks about. So he basically distinguishes virtues in two categories. The first one being the intellectual virtues, which combine both theory and practice and exist due to both nature and nurture. On the one hand, there are certain elements ingrained in human character, which can be further cultivated by teachers. And teachers are, in this case, the carriers of theoretical wisdom, but later on, they cultivate this wisdom in the students. So thanks to teachers, wisdom is cultivated and moves from theory to practice at a later stage. Now, the second category of virtues are the moral ones, which are referred in Aristotle's book 2. So they exist thanks to ethos as habit formation. Now, there are two words in Greek which are often confused. The first one being the ethos, with an I, let's say, and the second one, ethos, with an E. Now, the first one, ethos, is character in English. And the second one, ethos, is habit formation of moral acts. So if we say that we're trying to mold and shape one's character, what precedes is moral habits. So in a sense, moral habits are responsible for shaping and strengthening the character. So ethos, the character, depends on ethos, the habit formation, in other words. And ethos, if we were to define the word ethos, habit formation, is this tendency to act in the same way again and again, day after day, week by week, month by month, through repetitive and continuous practice, as if you are habituated to performing moral actions. You become actually accustomed to certain activities. So if intellectual virtue takes time during a prolonged apprenticeship, and you have to move from theory to practice, with the teacher being the carrier of the scientific knowledge, a moral virtue is acquired through addiction and habit, and constitutes the basis of happiness. Moral virtue is not innate in man, as we're going to see later on. So what's the connection now of virtue and soul? Virtue is intertwined with the soul and its three parts. Don't forget that there is a tripartite soul. The parts of the soul starting from the rational part, the reason, the logical, let's have a top-down approach, then moving on to the irrational part, the thimitiko, alo in Greek, and then moving even further downward, the intermediate part, which is the desiring part, which is both rational and irrational. So three parts of the soul: the rational, the irrational, and the desiring part, the appetitive part, if you like. The logical part corresponds to the intellectual virtues, whereas the desiring part corresponds to the moral ones. Now, bearing that in mind, let's say two examples of natural phenomena Aristotle uses as empirical examples to make a contradiction. He uses the movement of the stone and the natural properties of fire. First example, the movement of the stone shows the law of gravity, which can never change. within the same respect, the natural properties of fire cannot change either. Now, what does Aristotle mean by these examples? He actually means that natural properties are natural properties and cannot change. Nothing can change them. Addiction cannot change them. Unlike moral virtues, which are acquired through addiction. Now, let us remind of the fact that Aristotle goes against Homer, another example of Aristotle. What does Homer believe? Homer believes that there are some men which are endowed with virtue by nature. And if we believe this, these men could be rulers, the rulers of tomorrow, and can govern the world, in a sense, rightfully, because they are endowed with virtue by nature. Now, Aristotle says, no, that's not the case, and makes a distinction between the qualities you acquire through addiction, which actually enable you to fight for your rights and never surrender, in a sense. So the conclusion of this first few remarks is that moral virtue is cultivated through ethos, habit formation. And of course, moral inclination is also inherent to man. And it follows that the man carries this tendency to seek virtue through continuous practice and habituation to moral actions. All of this is mediated by the energy of logos, we're going to see later on. Logos is the reason in Greek, the organization of thought and knowledge, the capacity for logical discourse. So the man is inclined to learn, and man has to utilize his inner predisposition, this moral inclination, to complete the moral cultivation through addiction, habit, and repetitive process. I would also like to clarify the notion of moral virtue and say exactly how the moral virtue is cultivated. How do we become addicted and how do we learn? The answer is very simple, by exercising certain inherent qualities. To support this reasoning, Aristotle briefly mentions the examples from the practical arts. The example of the builder who learns by building, but also the art of music, the example of the guitarist who learns by playing. So something similar happens with the moral virtues. The moral act precedes, and then we acquire the moral virtue. So we've got action first, and virtue, the power, the potentials, acquired later on through practice. There is a distinction here between physical properties and moral properties. Also, this distinction is clarified by Aristotle, who says that nature provides us a birth with potentials as physical properties. And we as human beings, we are based on these physical properties. An example is that we possess, for example, our sensory organs. We've got eyes, we've got ears, and because we possess them, we can use them. So physical properties come first, and then we've got action. We've got these use of our natural potentials, so we can act then and develop these potentials. So properties precede energy and action. But in the case of moral virtues, it's the other way around. The actions precede, and then the virtues and qualities are acquired, as we saw previously with the cases of the builder and the craftsman. So the moral properties, in the case of moral properties, action comes first and power follows. To clarify it a bit further, energy precedes whatever possibility before it is actualized into a capability. So we've got energy, and on the other end, we've got the power, the potentials. And in the middle ground, let's imagine the activity taking place through reason, knowledge, and experience. And what's the outcome? The outcome is the actualization of possibilities, when you actually make something happen. In Greek, it's called energia, plus endynami, δυνατότητα, equals το πραγματικό, the real thing, let's say. Now, the thing is that what are the prerequisites? Once you have these kind of potentials, and you can tell me, how do you know you have them? You have to activate the potentials using energy through reason, of course. And the thing is that you have to be self-aware. You have to have this self-awareness that you have these potentials by nature. That's the prerequisite, according to Aristotle, so that you can actualize your possibilities and make them happen for real. Aristotle says that thanks to virtuous action, one can become moral and good. So far, so good. But one does not become good when one speaks only about good. And but when one applies what one speaks about, so it's not only theoretical, but actually it's putting theory into practice. Now, I'd like to mention the political dimension of virtues, which is very, very important. So Aristotle gives some examples from political life and art. He starts from the example of the good legislator. What does he do? He seeks to make citizens good and morally perfect. He uses other examples, like a good guitarist plays the guitar well and cheers the audience. The good builder builds beautiful buildings. But what about the bad ones? How can the audience distinguish between a good and a bad builder? How can the audience, the people, distinguish between a good and a bad guitarist, an artist? Here is when the teacher comes at play, and the teacher plays a crucial role, is considered necessary. So coming back to the legislators put into the practice of addiction to achieve the moral improvement of the citizens. And that's their role, but they've got to have the will to do so. And what does Aristotle say? That if legislators do not have the will to achieve the moral improvement of the citizens, which is considered to be their primary role, they're weak. And as a result, they're incompetent and harmful. So what's the basic purpose of politics? The basic purpose of politics, which starts, I'm going to say it again, from the legislators, is the moral education and the improvement of citizens. And what is the best way to educate a young person? The best way to do it is to educate a young person at a young age. The younger he is, the better education he's going to get. So exercise and habituation are not considered to be neutral concepts, but here acquire either a positive or a negative sense. So it all depends on the way legislators educate the citizens, in other words. It all starts from them. And let's assume that there is a good legislator. A good legislator could lead to conscientious participation in common affairs. And what does this mean? It means the active involvement of individuals in shared activities and responsibilities of a community. Now, they have also the help of their personal moral principles and ethical considerations, which act as guardrails. So Aristotle also emphasizes a thoughtful and responsible engagement in public life. and he does not accept this. He doesn't buy this passive acceptance of the people under the normalization, under the societal norms that exist nowadays. So he distinguishes between good practice and bad practice. Good practice is the application of appropriate rules or the education of the citizens with higher principles and higher values. And the bad practice leads to decay, to the decline of virtue on an individual and political level, to corruption, if you like. So everything starts from the good legislator, his will, and his devotion to the community, to the society, to the perfect city-state, politia in Greek. Apart now from the political dimension, there's also a social dimension of virtues. Now, what's the problem? The problem focuses, according to Aristotle, on the everyday life, on the practical life of the people. He believes that the daily attitude and the everyday interpersonal relationships among each other plays a crucial role. He examines the virtues, let's name a few, like courage, like temperance, moderation, justice, through their relation to their opposites, to their counterparts. And why does he do this? Because pleasure is through pain. In other words, he gives a more universal framework of social experiences. He wants us to have a clear picture of what's going on, not to focus only on the positive ideas of virtues, but also on the negative aspects, or the negative connotations. For example, one is just if he acts justly. One is courageous if he faces danger. One is temperate and prudent if he behaves sensibly. So virtue, in other words, is a disposition to control certain feelings, be it good or bad, and to perform the right action under certain situations. According to Aristotle now, the domain of justice has priority over everything. And why? Because he considers human being as a political being, as a political animal, in other words, but also a social being who develops one behavior or another. So the quality of social relations matters to Aristotle. The way we behave to our co-fellows, to our co-workers, to our friends matters to Aristotle. And it's only through the quality of social relations, along with the political environment that we have just analyzed, that justice could be administered within a broader socio-political community. Now, how can we become just? Is it through moral commands? Is it through advice? Well, you can have your own views, but Aristotle clearly states that by following a moral behavior within life through interpersonal relationships is the best way to do it. It's the best way for anybody to become just. Just have a proper behavior to your fellow being. And why? Because once you do it, this kind of tendency, this kind of repetitive, let's say, behavioral pattern of yours is able to forge, to push both the soul and the mind to produce a just act. As simple as that. There is a Greek phrase here in exis deftera physis. In English, habit is our second nature. And ethos, this habit formation that we've previously said, is our repetitive and continuous practice of either good or bad actions. As a result, we acquire similar habits and formulate our character accordingly. So the quality of our action always corresponds to the quality of our the quality of our activities. So if we're accustomed to good habits, virtue is transformed into a permanent element. So the ultimate good equals to the qualitative or positive actions, which open the way to qualitative habits. Qualitative actions, qualitative habits. And if they're qualitative habits, then they can create pleasant states of the soul. Now, it all boils down to the pleasant situation, to the pleasant state of the soul. Because if not, on the contrary, negative actions cause correspondingly bad habits, which are destructive to virtue. So the thing we can all remember here, the most important thing we can all remember is the social dimension of ethics, which lies in action within community and society, which also include social character and social interactions. You don't have to be an introvert guy. You don't have to be an idiot in the ancient Greek sense. Idiots were primarily involved into private affairs and didn't care at all about the public ones. No, you have to be an active citizen, actively participating in society. So citizens have to be habituated from a young age to goodness through correct education and upbringing. And the last thing I'd like to tell you is how you can confirm a moral act. Somebody can ask me, okay, so far so good, but how can I know that I have finally acquired a moral act? How can I really know that? How can I really know the lived moral virtue? How can I confirm that the actions that I'm actually doing are moral? There's a simple answer. By the feelings that a person experiences. The feelings could be pleasant or unpleasant. For example, if you're in a relationship, you like your partner or you don't like your partner, or somebody else might want to give in bodily pleasures, or another one might abstain from bodily pleasures. So both of them experience either pleasant or unpleasant feelings. So the realization of moral acts does not only rely on these are called material conditions. The material conditions are actually the pleasure and the pain that arise from our actions. So apart from the material conditions, Aristotle says that the realization of moral acts does not rely only on material conditions, but also on spiritual conditions. You're going to feel something like an elevation of the soul. So truth is subjective. The confirmation act of the realization of your actions, so that you can confirm that the actions are moral, are actually subjective. You can only feel that all by yourself. So character habits are firmly established and do not change from then on. Why? Because the actions release feelings of pleasure within us, and we're talking about good habits. And we also said that pleasures are both qualitative and non-qualitative, and it's up to you, and it's a personal matter. The feelings that you live, it's each time you feel them, it's always a personal matter. Nobody else can intervene. So feelings are signs of moral virtue, in other words. Be it either pleasant or unpleasant. And another thing, if we act based on our passions, our actions will express either good intention or internal weakness. For example, if somebody does not enjoy bodily pleasures, he has this good intention. On the other hand, if somebody is not able to abstain from bodily pleasures, he has that internal weakness. So a person's morality, how is it defined? It's not fine words or empty advice and good contact, or you should behave yourself like this or that, but a person's morality is always intertwined with habit formation, this repetitive, continuous practice. And notice that the wise people do not only abstain from bodily pleasure, according to Aristotle, but also rejoice because of that. They find it as a challenge, and they embrace that challenge to move on. Last but not least, it's not only the act itself as a means to acquire moral virtue, according to Aristotle. The result of the act also plays an important role. If you are habituated, accustomed to performing good deeds, great joy and elevation in your soul is created. So both the process and the outcome are important. And we came to the final part. What is eudaimonia? Eudaimonia is when the soul meets both the spirit and pleasure. That's the exact meaning of eudaimonia, according to Aristotle. Moral virtue is connected with either pleasant or unpleasant feelings, as we've said. And eudaimonia is this sort of well-being of the person, which cannot be conceived without pleasure, since eudaimonia causes the greatest delight in person, both spiritually, as we've said, and emotionally. That's the way you can understand it. That's your confirmation act, when the soul meets both spirit and pleasure. What does the soul do? The soul teaches pleasure to tame its passions. How? By rationalizing them. So you've got to have this reason as the mediating force, which is going to control and tame pleasures within the soul from a point on. So the soul actually shapes its quality by fighting its passions and by using reason, logos, as a friend, as hand in hand by logos. So virtue, the final phrase, final sentence, arises from the soul's best manifestations, inspiring the best deeds and feelings. Thanks for listening to my short presentation.
Thank you so much. Just an apology. So, the real speaker for today with us is Professor Demetrios Christ. He has spoken very brilliantly about the idea of happiness in Aristotelian ethics. And I would like to invite Aisha to summarize the main points that Dimitrios has covered. Aisha, could you please?
Yes, hello.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, okay. Thank you, first of all, Dimitrios. Is my voice audible? Is it clear or is it breaking?
It is very clear, Aisha. You can go
It's
ahead.
very clear.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Dimitrios, for this really, what can I say, well explained talk on the Nicomachean ethics.
Thank you. I hope it was clear
So
enough.
it was, but I missed certain points on that. We can, talk later. First, I'll try to summarize a bit. I hope I do justice to your talk. So, first of all, in this talk, first of all, we started with two categories of virtues. One is intellectual virtue and then moral virtues. Intellectual virtues are, taught, and moral virtues, which is the main focus of today's talk. Moral virtues are, built by, habit, by effort. So that is something which is, so by habit formation, we can actually, gain moral virtues. So here, ethos or character builds ethos, or which is known as habit formation of moral acts. Now, virtue is kind of, it is intertwined with tripartite soul. This is what Aristotle is saying. Now, soul has three parts: reason, or the logical part, then irrational part, and then the appetitive part. So here he has, intertwined virtue with the tripartite soul. Now, then it has been said that there are natural properties in the things around us in the physical world, right? For example, fire has its own property, and stone has its own property. Fire, it blazes, and then stone, it has this tendency to fall down. So these are all natural properties which can't be changed, but the thing is, we can change our character by exercising good habits. Now, Aristotle, he is also kind of opposing Homer, because Homer believes that, there is a class of men who are kind of born with or endowed with virtues, by nature. They're kind of born with it. So, and these men go on to, rule and, take up, top positions in society. Now, Aristotle is going against this because again he's preaching virtue as habit. Now, okay. Now the next thing which was discussed by that by exercising certain good qualities, like for example how practical arts are practiced, for example, in the context of builder and in the context of musician, how they practice their art and they go on to be good builders. So in the same way, if we want to be, really moral people, then we have to, uh, similarly, like practical arts, we have to practice all these moral acts. So in other words, actions are going to, develop virtues. Now,
Nice.
yeah. So now the next segment was on, how virtue is necessary for politics and society. For politics, it is necessary because, in short, we can say that a good legislator or a good governor or a person who is, ruling would make a diligent legislature. And I think what, the thing is that, and in a country with good legislation, there would be rules and there would be dominance of, higher reason. So ultimately, virtue would kind of reign in such a, you know, uh, place where there is good legislation, which ultimately stems from virtuous, habits. Now, again, in interpersonal relationships, also, virtue is very much essential, specifically of, courage, justice, temperance. All these virtues are kind of important. These are the examples given by Aristotle, but there is this specific virtue that Aristotle focuses on is justice. So the thing is, we are being just when we are fairly, I think, behaving with others, with our fellow beings, with everyone around us. When we are behaving in a fair way, in a good way, that is when we are being just. And the thing is, we can say, habit is kind of our second nature. So in that way, we can make virtue our second nature if we keep on practicing it, enough. Now, next thing is, okay. Next thing is that we can attain a pleasant state of the soul. And this pleasant state ultimately, so here Aristotle is trying to connect virtue with pleasure, because that will ultimately lead to his, theory of ultimate goal, which is eudaimonia. So he has kind of, connected virtue with pleasure. So virtuous habits ultimately lead to this pleasant state of mind. And reason also plays an important part in this, in the sense that reason, it kind of tames our passions. And it has been said that wise people, they kind of rejoice in this, in this asceticism, uh, that reason enables them to practice. So the thing is that, so if we are being virtuous, it doesn't mean that we lose on, you'll miss out on, pleasure. It's nothing like that. This whole, state of being virtuous is ultimately linked to a pleasant state of mind or a blissful state of mind. So yeah. And ultimately, we can say that eudaimonia is soul's best manifestation, when we are manifesting what is best in this soul. And in short, I think this is the definition given of eudaimonia by Aristotle. It's that when the soul meets both the spirit and pleasure, that is what we call eudaimonia. Okay, thank you.
Very good summary.
Very nice, Aisha. It was a very good summary. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this talk. I learned a lot. I'll revisit it. There's loads to unpack. Yeah.
It was
Certain
the product of
things
a long
I didn't
research,
understand.
actually.
Yeah. Okay,
Please
I'll
go.
come with my questions after Professor Daniel's, talk. So then we can discuss.
Yeah. Yes, Professor Daniel, please go ahead.
So thank you, Dimitrios, for those comments. And I'll begin maybe 20 to 30 minutes, and then we can pause for questions and wrap things up, okay? Because I know it's getting kind of late in India. So let's begin. So picking up on the last talk, we were discussing this structure of motivation. So we are creatures with a telos. We are creatures that make choices. We seek what is good. We're not simply following our nature. We are deliberating and choosing one option over another. So we choose a purpose or a telos, and this informs our entire society. So we have all different sectors of society. They're doing various things, pursuing a telos that is peculiar to them. All right, so we have people who are doing, they're building houses, they're doing medicine, engineering, all different sectors of society pursuing a telos. Now, well, there must be a highest telos. There must be this ultimate value that we desire for its own sake, and which organizes all the other goods. So our life is like a series of steps. We have some short-term goals and also a long-term goal. And so we're doing things for the sake of this ultimate good. Okay? So the question that I want to begin on is this question he discusses in Book 1, Chapter 3. Namely, what level of precision can we gain in ethics? ethics is a discipline. Like other disciplines, it's aiming to seek a certain kind of truth. Mathematics is a discipline. Biology is a discipline. And he is very insightful to say that different disciplines have different levels of precision. So, for instance, math. There's very little room for opinion, very little room for interpretation in the discipline of math. All right. Whereas something like the discipline of public speaking, right? That is something that does allow for various styles and various approaches. So there's less precision in public speaking. What about ethics? All right. Is there an openness to interpretation, or is it very precise? And there's different schools of thought on this. Okay. And actually, this will trigger some very interesting responses from students. Okay. So the question is ethics based upon nature? Or is it based upon convention? So we have this dichotomy, nature or convention, all right? And there's a school of thought that says that ethics is entirely by convention. So what is a convention? A convention is simply an agreement or a way of doing things in a particular society. Okay, so people get together, and to have organization and to have a smooth functioning of society, you have to have certain expectations and certain customs. Okay, so in India, there are certain styles and ways of interacting, certain expectations. Those are the conventions of India, and maybe it varies from region to region, right? So same thing in the United States, same thing in Greece. Okay, so these conventions are not part of nature. So, for instance, in the United States, we have a rule where when you drive, you are going to be on the right side of the road. Okay, you have to do that because if you don't, there's going to be just a chaotic traffic and high chances of getting hurt. All right, but in the United Kingdom, they drive on the left-hand side of the road. So you have to be very careful if you're traveling there to recognize that, okay, the car's going to be coming on the left-hand side of the road instead of the right-hand side of the road. Okay, is that based upon nature? No, it's just a simple rule they have in a certain place, and it can vary from place to place. Well, certain thinkers believe that ethics is strictly based upon convention. All these rules we have are just agreements in a particular place, ways of doing things, and we can change them. We can convince people that they can have a new convention. Okay? The question, though, is that is there some ethical universals based upon nature? That by our biological nature, do we have a certain kind of identity that transcends culture? So there's an ethical principle that will be valid not only in my culture, but also in India, in Greece. We have certain self-evident, basic ethical truth by nature, because we're all human beings. We're all part of the same biological species. We're Homo sapiens. Is there an ethical principle by nature? Well, here's what gets interesting with my students. This happened actually yesterday. We're talking about this idea of the highest good. So we have in our motivation some ultimate value, something we desire for its own sake. And everything we do is somehow referring to this ultimate value. So it kind of organizes our life. And so I was trying to explain this to my students, talking about, education. And there's various things that go into education. Well, to have education, I have these little markers, right? I have these little markers. These markers are for me to write on the board. Okay, we don't have like chalk anymore. We have these markers, and I write on the board. And this is a tool I use to communicate, right? Well, I was giving an example. Is a marker the highest good? Well, obviously no, because I'm using the marker for something else. So in the classroom, the marker is not the highest good because it's for the sake of something else, right? But what if I were to adopt the idea, and this would be somewhat bizarre, right? If I were to say, markers are my highest good, that I just want markers, and markers they make me complete, and everything I do in some way refers to markers. So markers are my highest good. So when I have a marker, I don't use it for something else. I just value markers for their own sake. And I was saying, well, isn't this somewhat bizarre? Isn't this somewhat against nature? Like, how could you have any friends? How could you have any friends if all you care about is markers? And you just interact with people in this very cynical way, and you're trying to use them to get more markers. Wouldn't that be somewhat bizarre? And the students are saying, well, if that makes you happy, then it's okay. So some of them were jumping in and saying, you know, what makes you happy is just a matter of personal preference. And it can vary from person to person. And if collecting markers, though it may seem weird, generates happiness within you, then that is your personality and your style of life. And so they were thinking more in terms of the idea that ethics is based upon convention, that there's really no natural principle, that you can be whatever you want. You can invent yourself. You can have some bizarre preference and some strange interest in things that most people see as merely utilitarian. So this is a question about ethics. Can you have any precision at all? Or is it purely a matter of self-invention, kind of like a Sartrean idea of your existence precedes essence, that there's no predefined nature, that you have simply a blank canvas, and you can invent yourself, and you can form a highest good that is peculiar to you. So, well, let's talk about this question. You know, is there precision in ethics? Are there universal rules based upon nature? Like, to me, someone who focuses strictly on markers as their highest good, it will end up generating misery. I feel like it's something that, like for instance, you would have really no strong social connections because your sole objective would be a kind of a quirky and selfish pursuit of the marker. Okay, so there's some interesting examples though that maybe ethics is not as precise as something like math. But we can't expect to get these like a recipe. Like how do I become happy? Well, here's 5 steps. You follow these 5 steps, 1 through 5, then you're happy. Okay, is it that precise? Well, here's some examples. It gets kind of interesting. So he says, for instance, wealth. Wealth is a good, right? Wealth can bring lots of comfort. If we have wealth, we can do things. We can travel. We can buy nice technology. So many things are good because of wealth. We want people to be wealthy. Poverty is a very bad thing. However, is wealth something that is absolutely good? Meaning that, is it good in every single context? Is it good in every single context? I think someone might. Demetrius, are you okay? All right. Okay, is wealth good in every single context? Well, we can think of certain scenarios where wealth is not so good. Some people have been destroyed, he says, because of their wealth. So he doesn't give a specific example, but we could imagine maybe someone who becomes very greedy. They become very obsessive about their wealth. Maybe people become very jealous. People become jealous of their wealth. So there's certain risks that come with wealth. What about bravery? Well, Demetrius mentioned that bravery is one of the virtues. so it must be good, right? But in certain contexts, even your bravery could end up destroying you. Like you end up taking some risks, and the risks end up backfiring, and it creates misery. Okay? So the point here is that we have these goods, wealth, bravery, but they're not universally good. And what does that tell us? That ethics has lots of gray areas. As a discipline, it is not going to give us universal answers, like a recipe. Okay, this number 1, number 2, number 3. You follow these steps, you become happy. You have eudaimonia, as Demetrius pointed out. Well, no, because there's many gray areas and there's many situations where things might vary. This is the idea of situational ethics, where we can't say that things are always right or always wrong. It depends upon the situation. You have to make a decision based upon the context. Okay, I think it's a good lesson that we need to be aware of the context. Things are going to look different. You know, someone maybe behaves in a very cruel way. Well, maybe it's different because for them, they have a certain kind of personal history that generates more of a sense of leniency. If someone's very cruel, we'll say, well, hold up. This person has gone through a lot. Okay, we're not going to blame them as much as we would someone who, should know better. They have the capacity to do better, and yet they're still being very cruel. So we have to be situational in our judgment. Okay? So looking at different levels of precision in ethics. Okay? And so Aristotle does think that there is a kind of, we can get reasonable standards in ethics. It's not just a free-for-all. It's not just this idea that you can convince people of anything, that we can change conventions. We can have these revolutions, and we can reimagine ourselves. We're like the existentialist. We can say that there is no essence, okay? That we have only this blank canvas, and we can invent our own values. No, there's certain reasonable parameters in ethics. And so you discern this in what most people think of as what is valuable in life. This is the next segment, and I'm going to kind of maybe a few more minutes here. The different lifestyles. Okay, he talks about most people. He calls them the many. The many. Most people, the average person, what are they pursuing? What is their highest good? He identifies 3 obvious candidates. Okay, so there are things that are very obviously motivating. Okay? So for most people, they can understand this. It does not require any special training or spiritual cultivation. Okay? It's simply very obvious that number 1 is pleasure, right? So, even kids can experience pleasure, and it's something that feels good by definition. And so we gravitate to it. Maybe that becomes our highest good, that the highest good of life is just to try to find ways to seek pleasure. Okay? The other one is wealth. So we might say that, if you're poor, you can't really get as many pleasures as you might like. And if you have pleasure but you're poor, it's not as enjoyable. So let's spend some time cultivating wealth, and that becomes the highest good. And people like getting like a paycheck. They like becoming successful in the stock market, and they get that big chunk of money. It feels good. So it's something very obvious, right? The third one would be honor. And this would be the respect of other people, that you gain the esteem of others, and that feels good. That becomes the center of your life. That becomes your highest good. So these different lifestyles, and they're going to be somewhat different in the way they pursue these goods, because if you're just pursuing pleasure, then you're not really interested in working hard or making sacrifices. You're kind of maybe more lazy, and you simply want to enjoy various pleasures that we have, various bodily pleasures, and you can do this in a kind of lazy way. You don't have much ambition. If you're pursuing wealth, you do have to kind of find ways and be clever to get the wealth. So you have to have motivation to work a little bit. And same thing with honor. You're trying to get other people to like you, and so you have to kind of adapt to their taste, and you have to win their esteem. Okay? So we have these three lifestyles: pleasure, wealth, and honor. And now we get some interesting comments here in Book 1, Chapter 5. So we begin with these lifestyles. You know, most of us maybe have gone through these stages, or we're in the stage. If we're honest, maybe the most meaningful thing to us could be pleasure, or just making some more money, or earning the esteem of other people, earning titles and degrees, and getting a more prestigious career. These are what really motivate us. So maybe if we're honest with ourselves, this is what we really like. Okay, but he has some comments here that are very interesting, and I'm just going to go through 3 or 4 of them, and then I'll wrap it up. Okay, so the first one, the life of pleasure. Okay, this is someone who just pursues pleasure as their highest good. And I talk to my college students, what kind of person is this? The person who goes to college for the parties. I'm not sure what it's like in India or Greece, but we have a party scene in the United States. Okay, and we understand why they're doing it, and it's pleasurable. And so they come to college because it's a good party school. They know the parties at that school are very good. That's why they come. They don't really want to learn. They're there for the parties. So they're pursuing pleasure. What's the problem here? This is kind of against our nature, because Aristotle says that, well, first of all, you become slavish. He says you become slavish. So what happens? When you pursue these pleasures in an immoderate way, they addict you. So Demetrius talked about habituation. You can reverse habituate, where you start becoming addicted to these pleasures. So these pleasures can start having a power over you, and they can start to kind of control your life. Okay, so first of all, they can become addictive. Secondly, this is a life that is fit for more of like a grazing animal, he says. So imagine like an animal out there grazing on the grass like a cow. They're not using their intellect. They have just a feeling of pleasure. Well, is that a life fit for a human being? You know, we are rational creatures. Are we going to be happy just lounging around, enjoying pleasures? It seems like over time that gets kind of boring. Right? So if that's all you have, just pleasure after pleasure after pleasure, it becomes boring and even maybe miserable. So is the life of pleasure the good life? Are we going to have eudaimonia pursuing pleasure? He says no. The next stage would be honor. When we pursue honor, we're trying to pursue the esteem and respect of other people. What happens here is that we come to depend too much on other people's opinion. And it starts to enslave us. We become very worried because it's not in our control. Other people can take away their good opinion, and we become very upset. We could become angry. And so we live on this roller coaster, so to speak. We live in these ups and downs because people keep changing their mind. They don't pay attention to us. Or maybe we even imagine that they're looking away from us. And so it creates this constant desire for validation. So that lifestyle leads to misery. Okay, and then as far as wealth, well, wealth is not something that you value for its own sake. You accumulate wealth so that you can buy more things, right? So if you're solely focused on making money, well, then there's a fundamental distortion because the money is there to buy things. In itself, it is just a piece of paper, or it's like a digital number in your bank account. You need to use it to buy things. And so to treat money as though it's the end, it's just a fundamental confusion about the identity of money. Money is useful. It is a means to an end. You're not supposed to make it the end in itself. So to wrap things up, we have these comments here that are suggesting that, my students are wrong. My students are incorrect to say that, happiness is a way you feel. Happiness is like whatever you want it to be. If that makes you happy, then go for it. No, there are certain objective standards that the pursuits of these goods do not ultimately satisfy us. That there is actually a highest good and a telos proper to being human. Okay, so I will stop there and thank you for your attention.
Yeah. So I think it was a very self-understanding concepts that you have told Professor Daniel. So I would just quickly summarize the briefs about what Professor has said so that everybody would be on the same page. All right. So first thing that Professor has talked about, that we are like a choice makers. We aim for our some good in the life, and our life is like comprises of lot of goals. That means a lot of telos, and our ultimate goal is to reach the highest good. That is what he was about to try to say. And he was also looking for the precision in ethics, because we have precision in mathematics, we have exactness, but in other things like public speaking, we lose that kind of precision. So we try to find out that what is the meaning of precision in other things like ethics. And then he discussed about the nature versus convention, what is universal, what is nature, and what is something which is socially constructed. He also talked about what goods means to us, and what, like, some goods are means and not ends. So we have to, like, he has given the example of marker or money. It's not serving the highest good, so we have to look for the highest good. And he also said that not all goods are universally good. For example, he shared the examples like wealth, bravery. This can lead to harm if there is excessive of it. And also, he also mentioned about different lifestyles, so that we can pursue the highest good. And pleasure, how can we consider pleasure as the highest good? Like, is this life truly fit for a human being? We can always question and think for a better answer. And he also talked about the honor as the highest good, because honor is about the respect, esteem, recognition. But the problem here is what makes one dependent on others' opinions is always a kind of mask. It's not a good, it's like something which is insecurity, something which leads to insecurity. So honor is obviously not fully in our control. So we have to pursue something which is highest good. So he has mostly focused on this pleasure, honor, and wealth, which is going to motivate many of the lives, so that we are not limited by the distortions that we see around, but we elevate ourselves to the highest good. So this was a very brief summary of what Professor Daniel has given to us. And let us quickly move towards the questions. Anybody has any kind of questions, please bring it so that we can just start discussing on that.
Hello,
Yeah, Isha.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Uh, Professor, I wanted to just ask that your students, they are they were saying that we can come up with any arbitrary idea or notion of happiness, right? Anything can bring us happiness. But the thing is, I think um, here, when Aristotle is writing about ethics and the ultimate good, I don't think he just means, happiness. Earlier, I would also think that Aristotle means that happiness is the ultimate good. But the thing is, in the way we understand happiness, it has lost, I think, its greater moral import. We kind of associate happiness with pleasure, I think, nowadays. So I think maybe your students are doing that. So the thing is, what actually want to ask is that Aristotle, when he says that, ultimate, we need to, look towards ultimate good. So I don't think he means happiness. I think when he says we are, aiming towards eudaimonia, eudaimonia is, I think, human flourishing, right? And it has something to do with happiness if we, start to flourish as humans. But then somewhere I read that it also means that it is activity of the soul, or we can say of our being, in accordance with virtue. So I think, yeah. So
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. So there's a kind of linguistic problem here where we have this English word happiness, and
Hello.
I think Professor
Oh,
Slow.
Yeah,
his
there's a technical issue. Yeah,
video
okay.
is frozen. Okay.
Yeah,
am I
Professor.
coming through?
Yeah, it's clear right now. You can go ahead.
Okay, so I'm coming through. Okay, yeah. So Aisha's comment about the word happiness and its loss of meaning in the English language, or at least it's kind of become very ambiguous, and it's maybe creating a confusion with my students. So, I mean, I think to an extent that is responsible for the problem, but also I think that they bring in a philosophy of kind of live and let live, individualism, that they've picked up this kind of it would be a kind of ethical compass they bring with them. They may not be aware of it, but it's a live and let live. If that's what makes you happy, then who am I to judge? And there's a kind of I admire that to an extent. They're very tolerant, and they want to accept people for their various choices in life. So I admire that to an extent. But also it does come from a kind of diluted language where happiness is just something fleeting. Happiness is just, a pleasure. So I could win the lottery. I get all of a sudden I'm rich, and I'm so happy. I would say I'm so happy now. But am I truly happy in Aristotle's sense? So I may not be. The money is very good, but some people who win the lottery can still be miserable. Maybe they're still very lonely. You're not going to fix the loneliness if you have lots of money. Maybe you could be very sick. Money may not guarantee that you become healthy again. So what is happiness? It's a deeper state, and the proper word is eudaimonia. I want to point out this comment from Aristotle. He says we should not call someone happy during their lifetime. He has this discussion of, so can you call someone happy in the middle of their life? And he says no, because things could always change. So this kind of shows you what happiness really means. It's an abiding state. It is not something that is just a fleeting pleasure. Like, my favorite team won the championship. I'm happy. No, it's an abiding state. So you can't call someone happy who is just in the middle of their life, because you never know what's going to happen, And so the happy person also is not like a chameleon. So a chameleon is like a little lizard and changes color all the time, right? Changes color according to its background. And so that would be a metaphor for someone who's always changing. So a happy person does not change based upon the situation. So I'm doing well. and I'm happy, and then I'm not doing well in my circumstances, and I become unhappy. No, the happy person is very steady. Okay, so Aisha is very correct to point that out, that there's a difference between eudaimonia and this idea of happiness, which has become diluted and can actually refer to something more like pleasure.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clear now.
Thank you for your question.
Okay. I would like to ask Dimitris about one of the question that is kind of, troubling me a lot. So he has, said something about morality and the feelings. He has connected somewhat morality and feelings. So I would like to know that are feelings like reliable to guide the morality, or do we need something more than that? Like we need reason, we need logical framing of our mind to look for morality. What do you have to say on this?
Yeah, exactly. Because of the fact that pleasures are both qualitative and non-qualitative, they're actually based, the acquired virtues and potentials are actually based on the quality of their actions which precede. So if we were to define the feelings somebody has after performing an action, we've got to follow a certain pattern, behavioral pattern, let's say, an Aristotelian pattern, which is the energy comes first, the action, that is action, and the power potentials follow. If we have this, let's say, action, energy plus power, equals the actualization of the possibilities. That is, you make something become real. Now, the thing is that nothing of this can be done unless you use reason as the mediating force. And reason has to be used along the experience and the knowledge somebody has up to that point. If you don't use your logic, you can't actualize these possibilities that are hidden within you. So you've got to use all of them, all of these mechanisms, all of these elements within you as a mechanism, and then it works as a clock. I don't know if you'd like me to elaborate any further.
Yeah, it's a very good kind of response to this question, because we generally don't
Yeah.
trust our feelings. It's very difficult because sometimes it feels like, no, this is the right decision, but later on, if we just meditate on this and we feel like that, no, this is not the right decision. So actually, what we believe or what we feel like is not certainly the correct way of going towards a morality. We have to look for something which I can say something which is very true inside and out. Maybe others also could join. Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to blame yourself if you don't achieve your aims, or if you kind of feel these non-qualitative pleasures, because you've got to believe in yourself, whatever happens in your way, and you've got to think like you're doing an exercise of trial and error. So what if you fail? What if you don't succeed? You've got to try harder without any worries, because you've got this telos stamped on your mind, let's say. So if you have this telos as the ultimate good, the purpose, as a universal entity, then you have no worries, because we have to think that Aristotle, the way he thinks on happiness, and in the Nicomachean ethics, he approaches happiness under a universal, comprehensive meaning, as the supreme good, as the whole, as a universal entity, which is intertwined with the final purpose, a telos. And you've got to think likewise. What is good for you, if you're a citizen of a city-state, what is good for you is good for the city. If you feel happy, your co-citizens also feel happy, but not happiness like I go out and have a drink and have a good time. Not that kind of happiness. This is disillusionment. We're talking about a deeper meaning, as Professor Daniel stated before. So the ultimate good of politics and the highest good that human individuals can acquire through their work is none other than happiness. As a man of the city, yeah.
Sounds interesting.
I have a question.
Yeah, Aisha, please go ahead.
So I wanted to ask that we spoke, you mentioned, Professor Daniel, you mentioned three kinds of lifestyles, which might seem as, lifestyles which will make us happy. But the thing is, he's saying that those, lifestyles are ultimately not going to lead to happiness. But the thing is, I wanted to ask what kind of lifestyle exactly can lead to eudaimonia? Does Aristotle mention any activities or habits that should be, practiced so that, we can achieve eudaimonia? Yeah.
So this is the big question, right? So we want to know, like, well, so if these lifestyles are wrong, then what is the correct lifestyle? I don't want to get. I feel like I want to wait to give that answer, because I feel like I feel like it's almost like a spoiler. So maybe we could work through more of the argument, and we could have a later meeting where we talk about, well, what is the proper lifestyle. So yeah, I don't want to give that away yet. So I feel like it's worth going through the argument step by step, rather than jumping ahead. But yeah, I appreciate the question.
Professor Daniel,
Okay,
would you
Professor.
like to answer Saima's questions? It looks very interesting. I
Okay,
will
let me
just
see.
read it out to you. So every
Sure.
action starts with thinking, and it is always a problem to originate either from appetite or from mind. So how Aristotle suggests movement between push and pull among them, is it reason? Now further she said that pleasure is both calculative and sensitive. Somewhere needs justification, but is reason an unmoved cause can only be helpful?
Yeah. So thank you, Saima. Is she still here?
Yeah, I think she's still
Okay.
here. Yeah.
Okay, good. Great. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, I'm here.
okay. Great. Okay, great. So reason or appetite. Is it appetite or from mind? There's a push and pull among them. Yes. Okay, so here's what I like about Aristotle. Typically, we think of the appetites and reason as in conflict. So you have your reason, the logos, your intellect, you're thinking through things. And then your appetites are just these crazy desires. And sometimes they're not always good. So you have this struggle, right? This model of struggle where you have these appetites and you want things. And then your reason is saying, no, don't do that. Oh, well, that one is okay. This one's not okay. So it's a model of conflict between reason and appetites. But Aristotle, to a certain extent, has that model, but he modifies it. And he says that, well, the emotions are not entirely irrational. Okay? The emotions and the appetites are not entirely irrational. They're not like these forces. All right, they're not just these forces that act upon us. They are also rational. And how so? Well, our emotions and our appetites, they can participate in reason. So he thinks that they actually work together. I think he's right, because emotions reveal reality to us. So like when we're angry, that is like picking up a certain texture of reality. So like when we're angry, we're having a feeling that captures something about the world. So it's not like the emotions are just like a blind force, right? Same thing with an appetite. You want something that is revealing something about the nature of the object, right? And we're not just intellectual beings. It's not like there's the emotions are just irrational forces. No, they can be part of reason. They should work together. Like your reason says, yes, I need food, or that is wrong. And the emotions can express that in a more vivid way. So they can work together. So this oppositional model is something that Aristotle rejects. They can work together. Emotions, appetites, intellect, they're all part of the rational soul, right? Whereas like our bodies, like the beating of our heart, is not rational. Breathing is not rational. It's just stuff that happens. Okay? Whereas the emotions, appetites, they're rational in a way. Yeah. Hope that clarified things.
Yes,
It has
that's the
clarified,
thing,
but
yeah.
it has also
Yes.
given a lot of doubts. So I
Yes.
think we need other session for clearing such kind of doubts that is arising right now.
Because through this process of habit formation, I would also agree with Professor Daniel, because through this process of habit formation, as the character habits are being established, the actions release certain feelings of pleasure within us. So you can have an action without feelings, without emotions, without pleasures being either qualitative or non-qualitative. Emotions, we have to take emotions into consideration and consider them as cohabitants with reason and logic. As the first part of the soul goes hand in hand with the third part of the soul, which, as Professor Daniel said before, the appetitive part of the soul is the intermediary part, is both rational and irrational. And because of the fact that it evokes emotions, it goes along with the first part of it, of the soul, the logical part. It's the same thing.
May I ask a question? So I have a question for Demetrios. If you don't mind, maybe maybe one more question, and then maybe we can
Sure.
wrap it up.
Sure.
So Demetrios, so maybe just two questions. So first of all, could you explain what you mean by this qualitative versus non-qualitative distinction in pleasure? Because for me, pleasure is always qualitative. Pleasure is a quality. It is a kind of experience that we have. It has a certain kind of qualitative character. It's a mental sensation and it's defined by quality, not quantity. or some other category. So I'm wondering what you mean by this distinction, first of all.
Yeah, there's a fine line between qualitative pleasures and non-qualitative pleasures. As we are seeking for the ultimate good and we are proceeding towards certain actions, the actions themselves are qualified based on our let's say the virtues which are later on acquired are based on our activities. For example, if we're habituated to good deeds, we're going to acquire good habits, and we're going to feel a qualitative pleasure. But if not, if we're accustomed to bad actions, if we're prone to bad things, we're going to acquire some bad qualities. So the pleasures we're going to feel are not going to be qualitative. That is, they're going to betray us later on. We're going to feel as if our pleasures acquired have this sort of internal weakness within us. So sooner or later, these pleasures are going to betray our own existence. So they have some existential meaning, you know.
I see. Okay, thank you. And then one more question. So do you see, so you mentioned that we build virtue by habit. So we don't have a virtue by nature. So we have to develop it by habit, right? So we don't, we're not born courageous or just. We do it, we build it by habit. So my question is, if we don't start virtuous, what is making us choose virtuous habits? So how do we get started if we're not by nature virtuous? Why would we be motivated to get started?
Yeah. So moral virtue, as I said before, is cultivated through ethos. This is habit formation. Now, even though moral virtues are not inherent in men, human beings have this moral inclination, this predisposition to behave in a morally right or ethical manner. So we ourselves are responsible then for choosing our own way by using our reason. Now, logos here is the mediating force and comes forward as the capacity for logical discourse between ourselves and us. This is an inner dialogue. That's the way it works, more or less. So the human responsibility, the human being is responsible for himself and himself only, so long as he is aware of the fact that the moral inclination is within him, and so long as he takes the right decision to move forward, it's up to him to decide. That's the way it is explained according to our research.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have covered you.
I feel more confident.
Yeah.
Okay. Let us quickly take two questions actually. Dr. Nishan, would you like to ask yourself, or should I repeat your question? So, Dr. Nishant is asking.
Yeah, you may go ahead, Madhuri. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Does Aristotle
ask, yes.
Does Aristotle ever become totally happy and totally virtuous? If yes, how did he become? If no, why then we are searching for something which is non-attainable by even the great philosopher? Satirical question. Anyone would like to respond?
Well, I think you can never attain the ultimate good. It's too difficult to say that somebody has achieved the ultimate goodness up to a certain point of his life. You're always hunting, you're always searching for the truth, the ultimate good, eudaimonia. You never stop. Even if you think that you have attained the highest good, you always search for more, you're hungry for more. And as Professor Daniel said before, no matter how many things you can justify as means to your end, no matter how many ends you think you have achieved so far, that's not enough. Aristotle would say there's something more. For example, we use an expression in our community that perfection is not a means to an end. It's not an end in itself, but what it actually is our true way to maturity. If I say a true way to maturity, there's always something more to discover. There's always something more to hunt, to chase, to run for. But if I say perfection is not a means to an end, not an end in itself, but the true beauty, physical beauty, or the true physical fitness, or the true spiritual awakening. For a moment, I might say, oh, that sounds great. I think he's right. Or he knows what he's talking about. But later on, I might doubt this statement by saying, what exactly is the true spiritual awakening? Is there a false spiritual awakening as well? What exactly is true physical beauty? Is that a false physical beauty? I mean, that's pretty confusing. It might lead to nowhere, if you know what I'm talking about.
Sounds good. I hope
Yeah.
Dr.
So
Nishat, yeah.
I have a then counter actually question to Professor Dimitris. If a person have a gap, if a person have gap in their theory and the practical, like if I say that everyone has to be honest, and if I myself lie, okay, then I'm not a perfect person. Then it's not a good thing, I'll say. So in this regard, I have a example. A guy, a person named Siddharth. So he theorized that instead of ultimate good as happiness, he said we have to achieve nirvana. And what he did find the nirvana is that if nirvana is that whi- whi- which something like what do I say, absence of totally desire. Absence of desire is the nirvana, his definition, and he achieved that. According to him, he achieved that. So that's right. So his theory that we can achieve nirvana, the greatest, you know,
Okay, there is an answer
principle.
according to Aristotle. Yeah, thank you very much for your question. Aristotle would say that whatever you're hunting for, whatever your aim is, first of all, you've got to think positively to achieve that aim. For example, if you're into nirvana, or if you're into bodily pleasures, if you say, if you abstain from bodily pleasures, you have abstained from the bodily desires. So far, so good. But the thing is, according to Aristotle, you have to be satisfied with that decision. You don't have to be forced once you abstain from bodily pleasures. That is, you have to agree with yourself once you abstain from these bodily desires. Only then will you be happy and will you attain this eudaimonia at a later stage, once you keep doing that, of course, once you keep to that same route. The same thing applies to the search for nirvana. Once you have achieved that state of nirvana, that is the absence of any kind of desires, and you might think, oh, now there's something wrong with me. I can't stand it anymore. Then you don't have achieved that kind of eudaimonia. You can never achieve that because something's wrong within you. You are starting to worry about what's happening with yourself and why you don't have these kind of pleasures. Why can't you live your life like you used to before achieving that state of nirvana? That's what Aristotle thinks. I hope I made it clear.
Yeah, you are clear, Professor. But I was thinking is that if something that is not attainable in totality, okay, so then why we should run for it? Instead, we should find something else goal which can be attainable and which has been attained by someone, and we have that example in our history of philosophy, Siddhartha Gautama, that he proposed that uh, yes, we all are in suffering, and if we remove our desire, if we'll be completely have absence of desire, he named that stage as nirvana. You may say it's a stage of complete satisfaction or contentful life, you know. And he said that that stage was also full of bliss. Bliss is the highest pleasurable state. You may compare it with Aristotle eudaimonia as well. So if that can be achievable, so why not we think in that way also? Anyhow, we are reaching to that Aristotle goal that ends eudaimonia, which is the stage of blissfulness, which is total absence of the desire. And I also tried one. It was not forced one. I also tried. I did vipassana on my own, and I seriously enjoyed that. Like on my own means I did in my room when I was in hostel, and it was really blissful feeling of that. After 10 days, I really felt bliss. But then I realized I have to be in this life. I have to marry for my parents. They have certain wish, something like. So then I thought I should not again do this vipassana thing or any kind of meditation. So then uh, yeah, but what I'm saying that there is something which can be achievable in theory also, in practice also. So instead of going
Yeah.
through this Aristotelian way, why not we should think of certain other way also, which is there, which is available. Yeah, your comment, Professor.
Yeah. Well, I think there's some participants. Maybe I think Bauna has a question, and we should maybe address Bauna's question. And she's a PhD student, and you have a question, Bauna, about epistemic responsibility. Maybe is that in the chat? Professor Madvi, you said that Bauna has a question on epistemic
If you could
responsibility.
highlight on what is epistemic responsibility, and if you could also relate it to the attainment of happiness that Dr. Nishant is asking, then I think we could have a very good answer for both the questions.
Okay, so epistemic responsibility in the attainment of happiness. Okay, so epistemic responsibility would be an approach to knowledge. So epistemology has to do with knowledge. And the ancient Greeks, including Plato, were very interested in defining knowledge. So what is knowledge as opposed to what is opinion? Something that we just merely believe or guess, and opposed to what we actually know. And so to be epistemically responsible would be to make sure that you do not claim to know what you do not really know. You're able to filter out what is not truly knowledge. And instead of saying that you know things when you really don't, right? So many people do that, right? We do that all the time where we think we know something merely because we believe it. We heard it somewhere, or someone told us and now we know something. So knowing is a very strong word, and it should not be used lightly. And can you become happier by epistemic responsibility? Well, yeah, I think so. I think that seeking truth and happiness are connected. Isn't that what we're doing here in Philotreat? We have this aim to seek truth. We could just live in ignorance, right? So people say ignorance is bliss. Is that true? Where we can just know nothing and then we're happy? Well, it seems like here we're thinking, no, if we know the truth about life, maybe the enlightenment of the Buddha, right? The Buddha has this enlightenment. And so it is an attainment of truth, whereas coming out of error is better than just having ignorance. So this idea, ignorance is bliss. Some people in popular culture say that. Are they correct? Well, I think Aristotle, the Buddha, are saying no. Come out of the illusions, come out of the cave, as Plato would say. So yeah.
All right, that was a very sweet and brief response. Now let us just wind up. Let us take this discussion ahead for our next session. And we are very happy to conclude this session with a very good end, which is always going to engage ourselves in more deep thinking and analysis of the concept that we have covered today. Let us get some more questions for our next session and engage in such kind of philosophical talk that will give us some new meanings to life. That is what Professor mean to say to us. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dimitris, for giving us such a good presentation on the happiness. This is an issue that we always reflect upon, but we never get the answer. But what you have covered so far has given us such reflections, which will help us to, have a good value to our life, because you talked about morality, you talked about our feelings and all these things. And of course, thank you, Daniel, Dr. Daniel,
Thank you very much.
for always being with us with such a good response to all the participants and clearing their doubts. And thank you,
pleasure.
Aisha, for such a brilliant summary and always bringing delight to our conversation. And Dr. Nishant, you joined us today. Thank you for joining. I hope you will join every time. And thank you, Saima and Bhavana, for taking your time out and joining in our conversation. So with this, let us end this conversation. Let us end this discussion and hopefully meet you all next time with a new discussion on a new topic, or maybe the same topic in a new perspectives. All right. So
For sure.
good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you,
Good night.
everyone. It
For a
was a
good
great
night, but
session.
for
Night.
Good
professors,
night.
good morning.